I never thought I'd end up in a hospital bed at 78 years old, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the constant beeping of machines. My name is Robert Mitchell, and just 3 days ago, I was tending to my garden in the small backyard of my house in Portland, Oregon. A house I've owned for over 40 years, the house where I raised my daughter, Catherine, after my wife passed away when Katie was only 10. That morning had been like any other. The September air was crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn golden on the maple tree that shaded my petunias. I remember reaching up to prune a branch when suddenly the world tilted. The sky and ground switched places, and a sharp pain shot through my left arm and chest. I don't remember falling, but I do remember the wet grass against my face and the desperate way I tried to call for help. Mrs. Henderson from next door found me. I later learned she'd been bringing over a pie, blueberry, my favorite, when she saw me lying there. The ambulance, the sirens, the paramedics asking questions I couldn't quite answer. It all blurred together like watercolors in the rain. The doctors said I had suffered a minor heart attack. Minor to them, perhaps, but it felt like a bulldozer had crashed into my chest. They kept me for observation, ran tests, and told me I was lucky. A warning shot across the bow, Dr. Sharma called it. Time to start taking better care of yourself, Mr. Mitchell. I've always been independent. After losing my Elizabeth, I had to be, for Katie's sake. I became both mother and father, learning to braid hair and bake birthday cakes, all while working full-time at the local high school as a history teacher. Even after retirement, I maintained my routine, gardening, volunteering at the library, meeting my old colleagues for coffee every Wednesday. I never wanted to be a burden on anyone, especially not on Katie or her daughter, Melissa. Melissa is my only grandchild. She turned 32 last month, with her mother's chestnut hair and my Elizabeth's sharp green eyes. She's always been ambitious, graduated with honors from UCLA, then straight into a corporate job in finance. I was so proud when she moved back to Portland 3 years ago, even if I only saw her occasionally for Sunday dinners. "Grandpa, you need to start slowing down," Melissa had told me just last week over roast chicken and potatoes. "You're not as young as you think you are." I'd laughed it off. "I'll slow down when they put me in the ground next to your grandmother." The memory of those words sent a chill through me as I lay in the hospital bed, watching the afternoon sunlight filter through the blinds. Katie had been in on the first day, worried sick and talking about moving in to help me recover. I'd flatly refused. My daughter had her own life, her own problems with the divorce from Melissa's father, still fresh after 5 years. "Dad, be reasonable," she'd pleaded. "I am being reasonable. I'll hire some help if I need it," I'd responded, perhaps more sharply than I intended. That was yesterday. Katie had to return to Seattle for work. She's a pediatric nurse, always on call, but she promised to come back on the weekend. "Melissa will check on you," she'd said before leaving. "She'll help with anything you need." I was dozing when a knock on the door jolted me awake. Melissa stood there, elegant in a grey business suit, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She had a leather portfolio under her arm and a tight smile on her face. "Grandpa," she said, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was too strong, making me cough slightly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck, but the doctors say I'll live." She didn't laugh as she pulled a chair closer to my bed. "Mom called me. She's worried about you living alone." "I've been living alone for 20 years, I reminded her. "I'm not an invalid." "Not yet," Melissa said, opening her portfolio. "But, Grandpa, this is a wake-up call. You need to start thinking about the future." Something in her tone made me uneasy. The Melissa I'd known since she was a toothless baby, giggling in my arms, seemed suddenly like a stranger, professional, detached. "I've brought some papers," she continued, extracting a stack of documents. "Just some things we need to get in order." "What things?" I asked, trying to sit up straighter, wincing at the pull of the IV in my arm. "Power of attorney mostly, healthcare directives, some property management documents." She laid them on the rolling table and slid it over my lap. "It's all standard stuff, Grandpa. Mom agrees it's for the best." I stared at the papers, the legal terminology swimming before my eyes. My reading glasses were at home, and the small print blurred into incomprehensible smudges. "I can't read these without my glasses," I said. "Don't worry," Melissa replied, handing me a pen. "I'll explain everything as you sign. It's just giving me the ability to help with your bills and medical decisions if you can't. Better safe than sorry, right?" As I hesitantly took the pen, a nurse walked in. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair tucked under her cap. "Time to check your vitals, Mr. Mitchell," she announced, glancing at Melissa. "And you are?" "His granddaughter," Melissa answered smoothly. "We are just taking care of some important paperwork." The nurse, her badge read Nancy, looked at the document spread across the table, then at me. Something passed across her face: concern, suspicion. "I'll need a few minutes with your grandfather," she said firmly. "Hospital protocol." Melissa glanced at her watch impatiently. "And can't it wait? I have a meeting in an hour." "I'm afraid not," Nancy replied. "You're welcome to wait in the visitor's lounge." With a sigh, Melissa stood. "Fine. I'll be back in a few minutes, Grandpa. Don't fall asleep on me, okay?" She squeezed my hand and left, taking her portfolio but leaving the papers. As Nancy checked my blood pressure, she leaned in close. With her body blocking the door's view, she slipped a small folded note under my water cup. Her eyes met mine, serious and intent. "Read this," she whispered, "when you're alone." My heart, already weakened, began to pound in my chest. What could be so urgent that a nurse would risk passing me a secret note? And why did I suddenly feel afraid of my own granddaughter? I waited until Nancy finished taking my vitals before reaching for the folded note. My fingers trembled, partly from weakness, partly from apprehension. I glanced at the doorway to make sure Melissa hadn't returned, then carefully unfolded the small paper. The handwriting was neat, urgent. "Do not sign anything. Call this number when you're alone. Ask for Sandra Miller at Elder Protection Services." A phone number followed, and beneath it, "These aren't standard forms. I've seen this before." I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Why would Nancy warn me about my own granddaughter? Melissa had always been the responsible one. Organized, efficient, practical. Could there be some misunderstanding? I tucked the note under my thigh, just as Melissa reappeared, coffee in hand. "That took forever," she complained, settling back into the chair. She gestured to the papers. "Should we continue?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd entered the room. There were shadows beneath her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. Her smile didn't reach those green eyes that reminded me so much of Elizabeth. When had Melissa started looking so haunted? "Actually," I said, making a show of yawning, "I'm feeling pretty tired, sweetheart. Those medications they've got me on are strong. Could we maybe do this tomorrow?" Something flashed across her face. Frustration, anger. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Grandpa, this is important. It won't take long." "I know, but I can barely keep my eyes open." I closed them for emphasis. "Besides, I'd rather have Katie look these over with me." "No offense, but your mother has been handling my affairs for years." Melissa's voice hardened slightly. "Mum's busy with her own life. She asked me to handle this." Even so, I'd feel more comfortable waiting. I feigned another yawn. After a moment of tense silence, she sighed. "Fine, get some rest. I'll come back tomorrow morning before work." She gathered the papers, slipping them back into her portfolio. "Should I bring anything? Books? Your crossword puzzles?" "My reading glasses," I said. "The ones on my nightstand. And maybe my cell phone. It's charging in the kitchen." "Sure, I can stop by your house." She stood, leaning down to kiss my forehead. Her lips were cold. "Get some sleep, Grandpa." After she left, I waited 5 full minutes before retrieving the nurse's note and reaching for the hospital phone beside my bed. My hands shook as I dialed the number. "Elder Protection Services, this is Sandra." The woman's voice was professional, calm. "My name is Robert Mitchell," I said quietly, though there was no one to overhear. "I'm a patient at Portland Memorial. Nurse Nancy gave me your number." "Yes, Mr. Mitchell." Nancy called ahead to alert me. She was concerned about what she observed. Sandra's tone softened slightly. "Can you tell me what's happening?" I explained about Melissa, the papers, my suspicions that had only formed after Nancy's note. Speaking the words aloud made me feel disloyal, paranoid. "I might be overreacting," I finished lamely. "You're not," Sandra replied firmly. "What you're describing fits a pattern we see too often. Adult children or grandchildren using a medical emergency to gain control of an elder's assets." She paused. "Did you get a chance to read any of the documents?" "No, I don't have my glasses, but Melissa said they were power of attorney forms, healthcare directives. Did she specify temporary or permanent power of attorney?" I don't know. She just said it would help her manage my bills and medical decisions if I couldn't." Sandra's voice grew more urgent. "Mr. Mitchell, I want you to understand something. A power of attorney document, especially if it's durable or permanent, gives someone complete control over your finances, property, and medical decisions. They could sell your house, empty your bank accounts, even place you in a nursing facility against your will." The room seemed to grow colder. "Melissa wouldn't do that," I protested weakly, even as doubt crept in. "She's my granddaughter." "I hope she wouldn't," Sandra replied gently. "But in our experience, financial pressure can change people. Has your granddaughter's situation changed recently? Job loss, debt, divorce?" I thought about it. Melissa had moved back to Portland 3 years ago, but we'd never discussed her finances in detail. She always seemed to be doing well, nice clothes, new car. But now that Sandra mentioned it, I remembered Katie mentioning something about Melissa's company downsizing earlier this year. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "We don't talk about money much. With your permission, I'd like to send one of our caseworkers to meet with you tomorrow. They can help you understand what's happening and what your options are." "Yes," I said, the word coming out more desperately than I intended. "Please." After arranging a time, I hung up, feeling drained and confused. Was I betraying my granddaughter by suspecting her of something so terrible? Or had she been planning to betray me? I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Nancy was gently shaking my shoulder. The room was darker. Evening had fallen. "Mr. Mitchell, you have a visitor." I blinked groggily, half expecting to see Melissa again. Instead, a man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and a police badge clipped to his belt stood in the doorway. "Detective James Connolly," he introduced himself, showing me his ID. "I'm with Portland PD, Elder Crimes Division. Sandra Miller asked me to stop by." He glanced at Nancy. "Could we have a moment?" After she left, Detective Connolly pulled up a chair. "I understand you received some concerning documents from your granddaughter today." I nodded, still disoriented from sleep and medication. "But I didn't sign anything." "Good." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be direct. We've been investigating a series of elder financial abuse cases in the Portland area, 3 cases in the past 6 months, all with similar patterns. Elderly person has a medical emergency, family member appears with legal documents, assets disappear." My mouth went dry. "And you think Melissa, my granddaughter, is involved?" "I didn't say that," he replied carefully. "But the law firm listed on the documents Nurse Nancy glimpsed, Harrington Beck and Associates, has appeared in 2 of our other cases." The room seemed to spin. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. This can't be happening. "I'd like to set up a simple test," Detective Connolly continued. "With your consent, we'll place a recording device in your room. When your granddaughter returns tomorrow, let her explain the documents in detail. Ask questions. The more she reveals about her intentions, the better we can determine if there's cause for concern. And if there is," I asked, my voice barely audible, "then we'll take appropriate action." His eyes softened with compassion. "Mr. Mitchell, I know this is difficult to contemplate, but if your granddaughter is innocent, the recording will prove that. And if she's not—" He let the sentence hang. I thought about Elizabeth, about how she'd loved Melissa from the moment she was born. I thought about Katie, working double shifts to put Melissa through college. I thought about my house, the garden, the life I'd built, all potentially at risk. "Do it," I said finally. "Place the recorder." After Detective Connolly left, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The hospital sounds faded into the background as memories flooded in. Melissa's 5th birthday party, when she declared she wanted to be a doctor to make people better like Grandma. The graduation speech where she'd thanked her pop-pop for teaching her the value of persistence. The Sunday dinners where we'd laugh over old family stories. Had it all been leading to this? Had my sweet Melissa changed so much? Or was I being paranoid, turning against my own flesh and blood because of a nurse's suspicion and a detective's insinuations? Morning would bring answers, but as I finally drifted towards sleep, one terrible question lingered. Which would be worse, discovering that Melissa was trying to steal from me or realizing that I had suspected her unjustly? The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes across my hospital bed. I'd barely slept, my mind racing between trust and suspicion. Nurse Nancy had come in at dawn to check my vitals, her eyes asking silent questions that I couldn't answer. The small recording device Detective Connolly had placed was hidden in the drawer of my bedside table, invisible, but somehow deafening in its presence. "Your granddaughter called the nurse's station," Nancy told me as she adjusted my IV. "She's coming at 9. I nodded, throat too dry to respond properly. Nancy poured me a cup of water and squeezed my hand before leaving. The digital clock on the wall read 8:43 a.m. 17 minutes left to wrestle with my conscience. At precisely 9 o'clock, I heard Melissa's confident footsteps in the hallway. She appeared in the doorway, dressed more casually today in jeans and a sweater, carrying a small bag along with her portfolio. "Morning, Grandpa," she smiled, placing the bag on my bed. "I brought your glasses and your cell phone, as requested." "Thank you," I said, reaching for my glasses with relief. The world sharpened instantly as I put them on, including the subtle tension in Melissa's posture. "You look better today," she commented, settling into the chair. "Did you sleep well?" "Well enough," I lied. "Hospital beds aren't exactly memory foam." She laughed, and for a moment she was just my granddaughter again, the little girl who used to climb into my lap for stories, the teenager who'd call me first with good news, the young woman who'd cried on my shoulder when her college boyfriend broke her heart. "So," she said, extracting the papers from her portfolio, "I was hoping we could finish this today. I've got meetings all afternoon." I adjusted my glasses, finally able to see what I was being asked to sign. The top document was indeed labeled Durable Power of Attorney, with Harrington, Beck and Associates printed in the header. I flipped to the signature page and saw lines for both me and witnesses. "Tell me exactly what these forms do," I said, remembering Detective Connolly's instructions to get her talking. Melissa cleared her throat. "This first one is a durable power of attorney. It gives me the legal authority to manage your financial affairs, paying bills, managing investments, that sort of thing." "Durable means?" "It means it remains in effect even if you become incapacitated." I nodded slowly, flipping through more pages. "And this one? Healthcare Directive. It names me as your healthcare proxy, the person who makes medical decisions if you can't." "And this third document?" I asked, examining what appeared to be property paperwork. A slight hesitation. "That's a deed transfer form. It puts your house in a joint tenancy with me. It's for protection, Grandpa." "Protection from what?" "Estate taxes, probate costs, Medicare spend-downs if you ever need a nursing home." She leaned forward. "It's standard estate planning." I took off my glasses and rubbed my eyes, buying time. "Melissa, why now? Why the sudden urgency?" She shifted in her seat. "Your heart attack scared us, Grandpa. Mom and I realized we weren't prepared for anything happening to you." "Did Katie ask you to prepare these specific documents?" Another hesitation. "Not exactly, but she agrees something needs to be done." I put my glasses back on and looked directly at her. "Have you spoken with your mother about these exact papers?" Melissa's eyes flicked away. "Not in detail. She's busy with work." "Call her," I said quietly. "What?" "Call your mother right now. Let's get her on speakerphone and discuss these documents together." Color drained from Melissa's face. "She's working, Grandpa. We can't disturb her during a shift. Then we'll wait until she's available." Melissa stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This isn't about Mom. This is about protecting you and your assets. My assets? I repeated, the detective's warnings ringing in my ears. Melissa, what's going on? And I want the truth this time. She turned, and I was shocked to see tears in her eyes. I lost my job, she whispered, 6 months ago. The company collapsed after a fraud scandal. I've been living on savings, but they're almost gone. My heart sank. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was embarrassed, she exclaimed. The golden grandchild, the success story, suddenly unemployable because my resume has a disgraced company on it. That doesn't explain these documents. She wiped her eyes. I met someone at a financial workshop, a lawyer who specializes in elder planning. He said I could protect your assets while solving my problems too. How exactly? She wouldn't meet my eyes. The power of attorney would let me access your accounts to manage them. The deed transfer would make the house partially mine. I could take out a home equity loan against it to pay off my debts. I felt sick. You were planning to borrow against my house without telling me. I was going to pay it back once I got back on my feet. You'd never even notice the money was gone. Her voice cracked. I was desperate, Grandpa. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Detective Connolly stood there, expression grim. Next to him was a woman in a business suit who I assumed must be Sandra from Elder Protection Services. Melissa Warner? The detective asked, though it clearly wasn't a question. My granddaughter froze. Who are you? He showed his badge. Detective James Connolly, Elder Crimes Division. We'd like to ask you some questions about your association with Harrington, Beck and Associates. Melissa's eyes darted from the detective to me, realization dawning. You set me up, she whispered, betrayal written across her face. You were recording me. Ms. Warner, Sandra stepped forward, we've been investigating a network of predatory attorneys who target vulnerable seniors through their family members. Based on what we've just heard, you may be both a perpetrator and a victim in this scheme. Melissa collapsed back into the chair, burying her face in her hands. I never meant to hurt you, Grandpa. I was just so scared. The debt collectors, the rent coming due. That lawyer said it was a victimless solution. Detective Connolly shook his head. That lawyer has convinced multiple families to commit fraud. The documents he prepares go far beyond what he tells his clients, granting total control of assets. As they continued explaining the scheme, I watched my granddaughter crumble before my eyes. This wasn't a master manipulator. This was a frightened young woman who had made a terrible mistake. Detective, I interrupted, could I have a moment alone with my granddaughter? He hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. We'll be right outside. When they left, silence filled the room. I looked at Melissa, really looked at her, and saw not the confident professional she pretended to be, but the little girl who'd once fallen off her bike and hidden her scraped knees because she wanted to be brave like Pop-Pop. Why didn't you just ask me for help? I said finally. She raised her tear-stained face. Because I'm 32 years old. I should have my life together by now. I didn't want you and Mom to know I'd failed. Failed? I shook my head. Melissa, losing a job isn't failing. Hiding it from your family, letting some con artist talk you into fraud, that's where you went wrong. I know, she whispered. And now I'll probably go to jail. I reached for the call button and pressed it. When Nancy appeared, I asked her to bring Detective Connolly and Sandra back in. I won't be pressing charges against my granddaughter, I told them firmly when they returned. Mr. Mitchell? The detective began. I held up a hand. However, I want to give a full statement about this lawyer and cooperate with your investigation in any way I can. And I believe Melissa will do the same. I looked at her questioningly. She nodded quickly. Everything I know. Names, meetings, all of it. Sandra and the detective exchanged glances. That would be extremely helpful, Sandra admitted. We've been trying to build a case against this operation for months. In exchange, I continued, I want assurance that my granddaughter won't face charges. After some discussion, they agreed that if Melissa's testimony helped them break the case, they would recommend against prosecution. focusing instead on the lawyers running the scheme. Later that afternoon, after Melissa had given her statement and gone with Sandra to turn over emails and other evidence, Katie called. She'd been notified about the situation and was driving down from Seattle immediately. "Dad, I had no idea," she said, her voice thick with worry. "About any of it, Melissa's job, these documents, none of it." "I know, sweetheart. We've all been keeping too many secrets." I looked out at the setting sun, thinking about the garden I'd be returning to soon. But that stops now. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital. Katie and Melissa both came to take me home, the tension between them palpable but softening. As we pulled into the driveway of my house, still completely in my name, Melissa spoke up from the back seat. "I found a job," she said quietly. "Nothing fancy. Administrative assistant at a dental office. It doesn't pay much, but it's a start." "That's wonderful," I replied, meaning it. "And I've applied for a debt management program," she continued. "It'll take time, but I'll fix this, Grandpa, I promise." As we walked into the house together, I thought about the garden waiting for me out back, about the maple tree dropping its leaves, about the cycle of seasons that brings both decay and renewal. Sometimes the things we think will destroy us are just clearing the ground for something new to grow. "I know you will," I told her, squeezing her hand. "And this time, you won't do it alone."